Alright, example 4 asks us to simplify the following. They're giving us a string of surds or a stream of square roots put together. So what we want to try to do is we can't add these together because the square root of 48 can only combine with another square root of 48. But if we simplify these down, we can actually find that we can do a little bit more. So we have the square root of 48 plus the square root of 75 minus the square root of 27. So let's simplify these as much as possible. So our first one, the square root of 48, 2 goes into that. So we have 2 times 24. Okay, so this is the same thing as 2 squared times 12. It's the same thing as 2 cubed times 6, which is the same thing as 2 to the 4th times 3. Okay, so we've simplified that as much as we can. So just hold on and we'll kind of move along from there in just a second. So the square root of 75, 2 doesn't go in, 3 does. So we're left with the square root of 3 times 25, which is the same thing as the square root of 3 times 5 squared. So we'll leave that alone for just a minute. Maybe write it down here on the bottom. And then lastly, we've got 27. So 27, that's the same thing. 2 does not go in, 3 does. Be 3 times 9, which is the same thing as 3 cubed. Right, if we see that, because it's 3 times 3 squared, makes us 3 cubed. So how do I simplify this further down? So all I can take out are squares. Well, 2 to the 4th, okay, is the same thing as 2 squared squared. So I can actually pull a 2 squared out. Okay, so it goes from the 4th to the square, right? I can half the exponent and then live with the square root of 3. Then I have the square root of 3 times 5 squared. Well, the 5 can come out and become 8, or 5 squared can come out and become a 5 times the square root of 3. And now this one is interesting. So I have 3 cubed. So I can take out 2 of them to make a regular 3, but I'm still stuck with one of the 3's on the inside. Okay, so that has to be left, right? We can only take out 2's at a time. So each set of 2 we take out becomes a 1 on the outside. We don't want to take out 3, because then it would just be 3 halves on the outside. So we had 4 square roots of 3. We have 5 square roots of 3, and then we take away 3 of them. So think of these as like x's. If we have 4 of something plus 5 of something minus 3 of something, we're going to be left with 6 of something. And that's our final answer here. So prime factorize, make sure you get it down to the simplest units possible, and then we can add them together. So the square root of 28 minus the square root of 24. So b is the square root of 28 minus the square root of 24 plus the square root of 175. If I believe that correctly. Okay, so we're going to do the same process again. So the square root of 28, that's the same thing as the square root of 2 times 14, or the square root of 2 squared times 7. Completely factorized. They're all primes, I can't do anything else. The square root of 24, so we get 2 times 12, which is the same thing as 2 squared times 6, which is the same thing as 2 cubed times 3. Now, if I thought of it as 2 cubed times 3, remember I can only take 2 out at a time, so it actually makes sense to leave it in the form I had before. So, in this one case, because I couldn't go any further down, it kind of makes sense to leave it like this. And And so 175. So 2 does not go into 175. 3 doesn't either. 4 doesn't either. 5 does, clearly. And so if I take 5 out, 5 times what makes that? And so this would be 35. And well, there's another 5 in there, right? 5, this is the same thing as 5 squared times 7, because 35 is made up of a 5 and a 7. And so now, I want to finally write my full answer out. So if I bring the 2 squared out, it becomes 2 times the square root of 7. This becomes 2 times the square root of 6. And then this becomes 5 times the square root of 7. Well, the square root of 6 is kind of on its own, right? The other parts, the square root of 7 and the square root of 7, those can actually be put together. And so what I'm going to end up with is 7 times the square root of 7 minus 2 times the square root of 6. So this can't be simplified further. We can't combine the square root of 7 and the square root of 6 through addition. We can only combine square roots of 7 with other square roots of 7 to add them up.